You're listening to Life with Herpes, and this is episode 98. Hi, you guys. I am Alexandra Harbushka, your host of this show, Life with Herpes, and I'm really excited for today's interview. We're interviewing my business BFF, and hey.
Hi.
Hey. And as you know, we don't have too many guests on the show, so this is something that I'm extremely excited about. And she is here to talk about bravery. And as you and I know, and my business BFF, Emily Ann, knows, bravery is something that shows up in your life when you don't want it. You didn't ask for it. You're like, why am I here? I want nothing to do with this. And you are left finding strength when you thought there was no strength left. Physically, mentally, everything. So this is my business BFF, Emily Ann Peterson, and she is an author, a singer, a songwriter. And in 2013, her life changed. Her career, her second voice, her security, all of it came to a halt when she received the diagnosis of a degenerative neurological disease in her right hand. Basically, her hand has a tremor. And it's something, and she'll talk about it, and it's something that was hereditary for her. And so here she was in her 20s going, what is going on? And I didn't mention earlier, but she was a full-time cellist. She's, like I mentioned earlier, she's a musician, but she was a cellist. And her cello was her second voice. It was her career. It was her bread and butter. It was everything. So when she found out she had this diagnosis, her life changed, and she realized she had to get really uncomfortable with being brave. And it changed her life. She made lemonade out of lemons. And she also talks about, but let me back up. Before this, she had survived an eating disorder. She started a music career during the recession. And now she's like, what the fuck? Now I have this, like, this is what I already have been brave. I got through it all. Why are you throwing this at me? So anyways, let me have Emily Ann talk.
That's a really good, really good description of all of the sequence of events. That was really good.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, it was fun for me to write this intro because I know you, but like, it's different because a lot of times when I interview people, I don't know them like I know you. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So it was really fun. But anyways, I'll have Emily Ann talk about this. And if you're wondering if she has genital herpes, the answer is no.
But I do have herpes, like at
oral. Okay. I was going to let you talk about that if you wanted.
No.
So yeah. All right. Got it. So, when Emily Ann has outbreaks, I'm like, oh, you're on my brand.
I am. I had one. This has been what I talk about. This phenomenon called seasons of bravery a lot, and this past couple weeks has definitely been a season of bravery for me, for a lot of reasons. We don't have to go into it, but I do know that stress is a big factor in when stress makes my tremor worse, and it also gives me cold sores. And I remember I've actually had my doctor ask if I wanted to be on Valtrex or any of those daily medications for cold sores. And I was like, no, because I kind of I'm the kind of personality that pushes all the way. I go really hard, just really strong. And I my body needs to give me warning signs that I'm pushing too hard. And so even though it's annoying to deal with the symptoms, I really appreciate having basically yellow flags get thrown in my life to go whoa, slow down. Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
You're stressing too much. Back off.
I think that's really some great advice because I know in our community, especially myself too, when I was first diagnosed, I'm like, I don't want to be reminded. I don't need to be reminded. I got it. Right. I know I'm stressed. You don't need to throw this at me. And that's great to hear from you. That's like, no, I don't want to take a daily suppressant. I want to know, I want to feel, I want to be able to adjust my lifestyle, or no, like, yeah, I got it. Like, I know this is going on and we're just going to have to ride the wave. Like, I can't change what's going on right now in my life.
Right.
I didn't mention your book. I mentioned you're an author, but I didn't mention your book. And you guys have to read it. By the way, I love the cover of your book too. I know I helped you a little bit with like, which one do you like better? But it's called Bare Naked Bravery. And it's this beautiful picture of Emily Ann completely naked. And
I'm not totally naked, but I am naked
in the photo.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you have this beautiful necklace on. And anyways, this is like the girl side of me saying like, guys, the like cover is so beautiful. It's my favorite picture of you. So it's just so beautiful. So
it's been fun having the book out there. It's been really neat to see and hear from people who read the book, their thoughts. And also, like I wrote the book because I knew that there were going to be people who were in a similar situation, not necessarily precisely in a similar situation, but in a similar mindset or brain space of what the heck am I supposed to do with life now? Like, how am I supposed to move forward with this? And I think we all know of someone who's either going through that or we have gone through it ourselves. And I knew that the books that were currently out there, they all talk about, a lot of books are talking about fear and like what to do with fear and your anxiety, but there wasn't a book that said, this is bravery and this is how you be brave. Mm-hmm. And here are the tools for you.
And what I like about that too is we don't necessarily want to be brave, and we have to. And when we have to, like you said, we don't know how.
Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of instances where you will find yourself needing to be brave, not knowing how. And if there's no like book or like how-to manual out there for it, then it can get a little like, it's even more terrifying thinking that you're all alone and you've never done this before. And mm-hmm. you're just going to have to pioneer this and figure it out for yourself. Mm-hmm. So any help that you can get in any respect, even if it's just like general advice, is really, really helpful to receive. So,
and especially depending on what you're going through, in this situation, in our community, it's talking about herpes, and it's not right. something that you're like, hey friends, I have like, you just don't want to raise your hand and share. And so that's why we're all here. But depending if it's herpes, but if it's, in your case, it was a tremor for your right hand and mm-hmm. playing the cello, and like, you can't really go find a lot of people that are in your exact same situation.
Right. And with mine, I was diagnosed so young. Mm-hmm. And it is rare that someone who is diagnosed that young also, that diagnosis ruins their career.
Right.
And so there was a little bit more of like solo, like lone star, lone wolf, pioneer, like just trying to go it alone and try to figure out like what am I supposed to do now? So
how do you pay rent? How do you feed yourself? How do you provide shelter? How do I talk? Because the cello was my voice. It was my security blanket. It was my everything.
I basically had to go through an identity deconstruction.
Right.
And which I imagine for someone who, if someone is putting a lot of their identity in like what other people say about them, that if you suddenly get diagnosed with herpes and you're reading into the stigma, that you're going to have to go through a similar deconstruction of identity as well. And that's really tricky, because if you identify yourself as like a really put together person who has it all under control, then all of a sudden you have scientific proof and medical proof that you don't, that can be really hard.
And you can't change it.
Right.
It's not like, oh, you have a cold for the week. Like, you know,
Right.
yeah, you can't change your tremor, and we can't change the fact that we have genital herpes.
Right.
Simple.
Right. Right. And because mine is degenerative, there was also a big question mark as well, which was, we don't know how bad it's going to get, because it's going to get worse over time. And then we also don't know how fast it's going to get bad, which was one of the main reasons why it was such a career
Right.
field, because there was no way for me to reliably depend on my hand for the next month or year or 5 years. It was really, so much was up in the air, and that was really tricky.
And has it changed since 2013?
The tremor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gotten a little worse. I mean, it used to be like a very subtle, like tiny little squiggle mark, line. I've learned things like I'm sure same thing with genital herpes as well, is that the things that I eat affect how much stress is being processed by my physical body, and the meditating every day, staying creative, that's actually really healthy for me. If I'm not creating things, then I'm not mentally a healthy person. And so if I'm not a mentally healthy person, then my tremor starts to shake, because that adds stress to my life and all those kinds of things. So I've learned that maybe not like there might not be a pill that removes everything for me, but there are a combination of behaviors and habits that I can build into my life that lessen the effects and the symptoms of it.
Which is basically what you took and did the Bare Naked Bravery.
Right. And that was, I just got really curious about what bravery was, because everybody talks about courage and strength and being brave, but nobody, like, all the definitions out there are really conflicting, or the definitions are not an adequate, like, this is how you do it. And I have a philosophy about what fear is, and that was not found in a lot of the books that I was reading, and a lot of the people that I was listening to and learning from. They were, talking about fear as being something that we need to avoid or lessen or reduce, but I actually see fear as a tool of bravery. It's not something that we need to avoid or deny or ignore. It's something that we need to actually use, our fear, in order for us to move forward with the right decision in light of our situations. So
yeah, I know. It's and it, fortunately, we have to look at it as a fortunate thing, right? These things all happen in our lives. We don't sign up for them. You know what I mean? Like, no one signs up to get herpes. No one signs up to have a tremor. No one signs up to have a catastrophic car accident. No one signs up to have a heart attack. No one, whatever it is, right? No one signs up for those things, but they're going to happen. And the point is what you're saying is, look, let's roll our sleeves up. All right, let's address it. It is what it is. And how do we face it head on, and how do we get through it?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my question to you is, because I'm just going to lob some questions right back.
Yeah, do it. Throw it.
When you get diagnosed, how, or when you were diagnosed, how did you utilize your fear?
How did I utilize my fear? When I was very first diagnosed, I went into a hermit mode. It was the Friday before 4th of July, and I think 4th of July was either a Sunday or Monday, so we had that Monday off for an observance. So I basically had a 3-day weekend, and I remember I just was a hermit. I went to yoga, and I cried, and I went home, and I cried, and I went back to yoga, and I cried. So there was no fear. I mean, there was no, I wasn't digesting fear. I was just in the state of deer in the headlights and absolute shock.
And
Then
did you have an outbreak at that time?
Oh yeah, horrible.
Okay.
I couldn't sit. I mean, it was awful.
And you went to yoga?
I just figured like, mind, body, soul, and let's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can imagine, like, if I had an outbreak, I wouldn't want to be doing the splits.
Right. Yeah. Or yoga pants. Really.
Or
Yeah.
yoga pants.
I know. I remember I was invited to like a party and beer pong and all that with my friends from high school, and I couldn't do it. Like I walked in and I had to leave. I just couldn't do it.
Okay. So
yeah.
one of the ways that you utilized your fear was you enforced boundaries for yourself, which are so crucial. Like we have boundaries in our diets, like I can't have gluten or I can have gluten, but we can also have boundaries in our personal lives. Like I won't hang out with these people, or I will, or I'm going to hang out with them next week when I don't have an outbreak, or I'm going to go to yoga because this is something comforting and warm and consoling. And I need that comfort from all of the activities that I'm doing. So you utilized your emotional processing, I think, in a really wise and brave way. Like it takes a lot of guts to say no to parties. For some people that takes a lot of guts to say, no, I know you're expecting me to be there, but I can't show up. I can't be there for you.
I would have been angry. I would have been just that raging bitch, just angry and just negative Nelly and all that. I just wanted to do yoga and then go home and have a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Detox before I retox.
Now, later, as you were coming out of your diagnosis, how did you, or coming through or walking through the first weeks or so with your diagnosis?
How did I utilize, what was it, bravery, or?
How did you utilize your fear?
My fear? I tried to obviously heal it as fast as possible. How did I utilize my fear?
So here's how
it's such a tough question. Yeah.
No, I know.
It's hard. I'm going through it in my mind and I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel that anymore.
So here's how and this is not like, here's how I did it. Now you should do the same thing. But because there are so many ways that you can utilize fear, you just gave a really good one of like, you got to go into hermit mode so that you can
restore,
retain energy energy and effort, basically. So one of the things, I also did that. I went up to the mountains and kind of like creatively sulked. But another way I utilized my fear was to get really curious. So people research things.
I was going to say that.
Like try to figure out what exactly is this thing that I have. I did that with with my own diagnosis, but I also did that with bravery. That was what prompted me to go down this book writing journey. Was I realized I want to know, how does one be brave? Because if I'm going to move through the rest of this season of my life, I'm going to have to be brave. And I didn't know what the heck that meant. So I just got really curious and I researched it. And that can it can be informal research. Like maybe you ask a bunch of people, or you have a friend who has herpes and you just like ask, pick their brain. That might be a really good utilization of fear. You can also utilize your fear. I'm just picturing like what it would feel like to be diagnosed with something else again, especially something viral. And that would, I would want to, one way I would utilize my fear would be to get really judicious about how I interacted with people. And I would get really intentional about the people that I was hanging out with.
Yep, because they become toxic, or they can, or they can be a great influence on you. Yeah, and you're right. I went into the research mode and I tried to find alternative methods like acupuncture, like Chinese herbs. I wasn't into the nutrition thing yet. I mean, I wasn't into I didn't know enough about it other than I was angry and I was pissed off and I was like, why me? And um, yeah, I remember I went into the research phase of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are also this also depends on your personality type, like how you tend to utilize your fear depends on your personality type. Like if you're an introvert, you might be like lean into the hermit mode. But if you're an extrovert and you're dealing with like sensitive information, how do you process, like you can't process things with the normal people you would normally process unless they're super close friends, because that's another option, is that you utilize your close friends and get really vulnerable and honest with them. So you can also reach out. You can research, but you can also reach out.
And the scary part of that, of course, is the judgment, is the perception, is the am I going to be accepted? You know, am I going to be a scarlet letter? Are you going to be scared to not, like, do you not want me at your house? Like, do you not want me around your kids? You know, all those things that I'm sure, I know when you're diagnosed with herpes, that's what you go through. Different from what you went through of, if it's not, can I be around your kids because of my, I can't play my cello, but it was like cutting off part of your body.
Well, they did attach, like it wasn't quite overt, but there was a lot of self-worth that was placed on
Huge
myself. So like because the cello was the only reason or the only way I was paying rent at the time, there was a direct relationship between me not playing the instrument and me not having a fiscal value in our society. And that was really tricky for me to have to redefine and go like, okay, just because I am not able to make money in the same way does not mean I am less of a person.
Oh, I'm sure, because this is what you've trained for.
Oh yeah, decades. And you know, regarding herpes, just because you have a disease does not mean that you are any less of a person.
Oh, absolutely not. And that's the thing that you're talking about here, is getting brave, getting curious, doing your research, getting angry, finding the strength, conserving your energy, or just putting boundaries around yourself or your environment in which you can heal and process and grow and flourish and realize that whatever I'm like picturing it, like whatever little like stigma I was picturing, like, you know, when you order a steak and they'd be like, it's rare, or it's medium rare, or like I was picturing, but like I was picturing it like in a bunch of cheeses, like this is the blue cheese, this is the, anyways, whatever you're labeled as, or whatever label you put on yourself has nothing to do, like you were saying, this was your way of providing food and shelter and paying your rent, and this was an identity. And that's what happens a lot of times with herpes. It's not obviously paying your rent, but it's a new identity that you're now associated with, which you didn't want,
right?
Because of the stigma that's attached to it. Yeah, so a little bit different, but same cycle, same process of digesting, pulling apart, and getting through it.
And I think it's important to recognize that everybody's going to have different personality types,
of course,
in how they respond or lean into bravery. So that might be my next book, is like, what's your bravery personality type?
Because you should do a quiz.
That'd be awesome. Done. Well, consider it done. But I do think that it would be, you know, it's an invitation to get to know yourself better. Because the more you get to know yourself, the easier bravery will become.
Oh, totally. It's a muscle.
Mm-hmm. Well, and your personality type is a tool, just like
Mm-hmm.
fear is. And so if you're going through this like project, we'll call herpes a project, or your herpes diagnosis a project, then your personality type is a tool to
Mm-hmm.
build something out of this project. Your all of the skills that you have with bravery, those are all tools as well. And there are 12 of them, so there's 12 ingredients of bravery. We've already listed off a couple of them, but then some other tools that are at your disposal are things like the people around you, your situation, the relationship that you may or may not be in. Like those are really important factors in how you move through your herpes diagnosis with bravery.
Yeah, your living situation, all of that. Where are you in your journey? Yeah. Yeah. And
All of it.
and learning, not only learning how you have to digest it, but how
Mm-hmm.
do you tell someone else?
Right. Right.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I've digested it. I know what's going on, but now will somebody accept me because of it?
Mm-hmm.
Which would be similar for you in the sense, can I go on and create a career or create a second voice in the same way that my cello provided this for me?
Right.
Can I move forward?
I'm just gonna
Well,
turn my light on
oh
because
yeah,
I realized that
the
the light
sunlight.
is doing weird things to my face. So, well, I
By the
would
way, your hair's on point again.
thank you. The I would say that you're absolutely correct, because your reaction to something happens a lot further in advance than someone else's reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually took, like, I had already decided which way I was going with my career and how I was going to move through this diagnosis. But it took like a year and a half for my personal community, like my friends and my family, to get it, to like understand that I no longer play cello like I used to, and I no longer do this. And I had to get really, like, there were a couple of days where I was kind of angry.
Oh, totally.
I I had gone from saying, "Hi, my name is Emily Ann Peterson. I'm a cellist. I play the cello," to, "Hi, my name's Emily Ann Peterson. I'm a songwriter," or "I'm not anything." I wouldn't add anything to the end of that. And that's, when somebody gets to know you as something and then they find out that you're different than that, there's a big adjustment process or period, I should say, a big adjustment period that happens. And with my scenario, my people, there wasn't a big adjustment. They just had to kind of like be a little bit vigilant about acknowledging that I no longer did this, or I had to get honest and say, like, listen, it hurts my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts my feelings when you describe me as a cello player, not because I don't like being called a cello player, but because I want to be, but I can't be anymore. And when you call me that to a total stranger or say it out in front of people, it only rubs lemon juice in the wound that is already really painful. And like, I may be still a cello player for the rest of my life, but I don't like, for my sake and for my grieving process, can you please not do this? And there were some people that were like, oh my gosh, it didn't
Didn't
occur to
realize.
me. Like, it didn't occur to me that it was that hard for you still, or, that kind of thing. So,
That's a huge key to say, especially with herpes and dealing with that. You may have a friend that says a herpes joke and makes, it's like, like you said, putting salt in the wound or lemon juice in the wound or whatever, or I don't know what it is they do. They may just put you in a situation where you're like, whoa, I suddenly just feel really uncomfortable. And having that voice, which you didn't probably want to have,
right.
you didn't necessarily want to say, this really hurts my feelings, or I feel really uncomfortable. But that's another thing, is back to boundaries. What you were saying I did is I created boundaries for myself. That is also, when you get through those process of grieving and being out and exchanging and things like that is setting those boundaries too for your friends. I like that.
Yeah. It's and setting those boundaries or stating those truths and being vulnerable in that way can be really difficult. But I know that it is worth it, because the other option is to throw yourself under the bus, to talk shit about yourself, and to be fake and try to be something different than what you actually are. And none of those sound good to me.
No.
Like, I know that if you go through life with those things on a consistent basis, that's like a recipe for so much more disaster than
a bigger disaster.
Yeah.
A bigger disaster. Yeah. It's just, it eats you up inside. And it's harder to put the nail on the head, but hey, if you don't do that, you get lots of nails in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell your story. And this is, I loved when I was reading your book. And by the way, you guys, you absolutely, I know I mentioned it earlier, but Bare Naked Bravery, you have to read it. I love it. It was fun being friends.
You listened to the audio?
I listened. I'm a listener.
Yeah.
But it's fun because Emily Ann narrates it, and of course I know her personality, and I know when she's smiling, I know when she's laughing, I know when she's angry, I know, like, so it was fun to listen to you and obviously know you. Right. So highly recommend it, Bare Naked Bravery. I'll have a link in the show notes, and you can go to Audible and all that fun stuff. But anyways, when you talk about the pumpkins.
Oh yeah.
This was great. And I think this might be a great thing for us to do with our community. So I'll let Emily Ann share.
I'm actually really looking forward to October because I want to make a big deal out of pumpkin smashing again. So I had gone through this season, again, what I now call a season of bravery, where just like one thing after another happened. And the straw that broke the camel's back was someone broke into the church that I was renting office space from. And the only thing they stole from the building was my laptop. Like, they broke into the church and then they kicked down my office door. And then the only thing they took from my office was my laptop.
You're like, great.
Right. Which was like a main, like, fortunately I had a desktop in a different place, so I was able to move that over, but it was like, just like, what an awful thing to do. Like, and even though it may not seem like a really big deal, it was at that time, because it was like one of many dominoes to fall. It just was just the worst, just the pits, absolute pits. And I was pissed. And I cried a whole bunch. And then when I like realized that, okay, I gotta like move on, do something with my day, it occurred to me that later on that weekend I was gonna have go to my friend's chili cook-off contest because it was October, and I proposed to her that we should do a pumpkin smashing where everyone would bring pumpkins to smash in the name of the awful things that had happened to them that year. And so you could just smash your anger away, because that's just what I needed. I just needed like a safe room to like smash plates against the wall and just do angry things. And I mean, I go deeper into this story at the end of my book, but what happened was I ended up being the only person that brought pumpkins to smash at this party, and I happened to bring 12 of them.
One for each year, or one for each month.
Just one for each thing that had happened. That was just really awful that had happened. Just things like, my boyfriend at the time, my boyfriend before had, we had broken up because he was going to go do his dream job in Iceland across the world. And neither of us wanted to do long distance stuff. And so we just broke it off. And even though it was really exciting and I'm really, was really proud of him, it was just like, that was just kind of a sucky experience, like, to have to break up for those reasons. There's other things like the laptop got stolen, or being squeezed out of a creative project with a couple of, friends and collaborators. There was, clients who undervalued me and all sorts of other things. Like there was a long list of things that had debt. That was a good one. And then the biggest one was my tremor. And by the time I had smashed through all of the pumpkins except this last pumpkin, I was just really tired because these were not like fresh. I mean, these were not rotten pumpkins or like pre-carved pumpkins. These were like fresh, whole pumpkins. So it was tricky. It was really hard.
It's hard.
Physically difficult to do. And I got through half of the last pumpkin of my essential tremor pumpkin. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And one of my friends who was watching me do this stepped in and took the, smashed the rest of the pumpkin. And I like melted down in tears in front of these people at the chili cook-off. And it was a really good, I tell the story because it's a really good example of how when I know that a herpes diagnosis is not something that is always appropriate to do in public, but it's so important that you reach out to people because they might step in and take the bat from your hand and like smash the rest of it with you. And it can feel easier and go smoother, and you don't have to do it all alone. So, I think that connection with others is such an important factor of being brave in general, but also especially in light of herpes as well. So
I love that. That's such I first of all, I love the story, and because I could feel it, you know what I mean? And then second of all, I know what you're talking about because my birthday is Thanksgiving, and I happen to be down in Cabo most of the time over Thanksgiving. And so I would have a piñata. My girlfriend would be like, oh, we'll just get a piñata. And it was fun. And like, it was so funny to watch, like everyone, like when they first start batting, it's like, oh, this is fun. And then by the end, like they are like, because November. So, the year's over, we have one more month, and they start just boom, like it is so funny to watch because everyone wants to be all gentle, like, oh, I don't have it. And then it is like full on rage, like She-Ra, Princess of Power, Yeah. And so when I was reading, I was like, yeah, I know. And like, I just wanted to share that. I wanted you to share that because you need to get it out.
Yeah.
Figure out a way to get it out.
Right.
And sometimes, as we're taught, like, oh, I'm okay, and you're not.
Right.
You're like, this sucks.
And here's what happens. Like, if you don't give yourself an outlet for responsibly and safely processing all of these emotions, then you will end up doing it in an unsafe, irresponsible way. And you won't be wailing on pumpkins and piñatas. You'll be wailing on your relationship and perhaps your actual, your significant other or yourself, which is
it stays in you.
Yeah. Well, and if it stays in you, then you implode. You don't like, you can't survive that. And so you have to process these kinds of emotions. So important.
So important. Yeah, I'm so glad I had you share that story because we've all had that, like, oh, whether it's herpes or essential tremors, but we also have those little things that accrue, and you're like, what? How? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean there was a leak in my house? What do you mean the power's out in my house because the power's out and I'm supposed to be whatever it is, all these little things happen. But okay, so I want you to talk about and I want you to talk about your school, Advanced Bravery.
Sure.
Because this is really in alignment with our community, with the Life with Herpes community. It is, we have to be brave, and whether it's brave for somebody else, but you need to be brave for yourself. Like we need to have your own boundaries. We need to smash those damn pumpkins. We need, that stuff.
Well, so we are, so we started a School of Advanced Bravery, which is basically a monthly membership to dive into each of these 12 ingredients of bravery, and do so as a group, connection as a group, and dive into one topic a month. So there might be one month that is vulnerability. There might be another month that is your power of choice. There might be another month that's all about boundaries. And there will be, because the 12 ingredients are already laid out. So power of choice, boundaries, vulnerability, risk, and rejection, those are all in line with these ingredients of bravery. So we meet monthly and do a master class where the ultimate topic is, or the application of this theme is voted on by the students. I do weekly office hours. So if you have a question about a specific instance of bravery, or you're in the midst of a season of bravery and you need some like, hey, have you thought about telling this person that you can only have a conversation with them for 15 minutes at a time? Those are sometimes those tools that we have in the back pocket, and it's nice to be able to reach out and ask for some help in that regard. We do guest experts that come in and give some lectures on their various topics of expertise. And I also give all students of the School of Advanced Bravery, they get access to my patron library, which is filled with all of the songs of mine that haven't yet been released, and poetry and letters to my patrons and everything. So, and I did that because I wanted to continue to display, because I do it in my book where I tell stories using myself as an example of how I did or did not do something in a brave way. But I wanted to do that with my patron library and my students, because I want my students to see that I'm also going through this as well. Bravery is not something that you perfect overnight. It's something that you build every day in a consistent way, and slowly over time you get better and braver and braver and braver.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. I'm kind of a part of it.
Come on in.
We hang out all the time, so I feel like I'm a part of it. But I want to do it. And I was just thinking, I think it'd be great to have you come to our support group that we meet. Yeah, and be like a special guest speaker on courage and creativity and bravery, and that just popped in my mind. So we have our weekly support groups, or twice a week support groups. So we can collaborate again. I love this.
I love it too. I think to tie it all up, the reason why first of all, we need people to be brave in the world, because there is a lot of, pardon my French, there's a lot of shit around the world that can be avoided by someone or a group of people being braver on a day-to-day basis.
100%.
And my contribution to changing the world is empowering and inspiring others to change their own world. Because that's really, through bravery, that can be really powerful.
And that energy just grows and grows and gets put out there into the world, and we change it one little brave moment at a time.
Mm-hmm. There's your something viral.
There's my viral. There we go. I like that. Sharing is caring, and just keep growing and put it out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We'd rather do that than spread herpes. All right, Emily Ann, I had so much fun, and I know our listeners here and viewers had just as much fun as we did. I hope you all can just see how much I love Emily Ann, and she really has been such an important person in my life and with my journey, sharing that I have herpes. She was there from every step of the way, and she helped me share the message. So
it's so fun to see all of this grow for you. It's been really fun to witness it all happen. So thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. And you guys go to emilyannpeterson.com, and she has her website is beautiful, first of all, but I love it. And but you can find great information on the School of Advanced Bravery. You can find it on her book, Bare Naked Bravery, her podcast, Bare Naked Bravery. You can listen to her music. You can read everything. Just go there. Just go there. All right. Thanks, Emily Ann.
Bye, you guys.